I'm Dr. Verna Gibbs, and right now we're in the radiology area, or perhaps this is the cardiac cath lab, or this could be an interventional suite. Wherever in your facility they are doing procedures where an incision is made and a package of surgical sponges are used, we want to have in place a safe management practice to account for the sponges, not just to account for them. And we have to use the important structural elements of this practice, which is going to be used throughout all of the areas in your hospital. The ORs, the OB areas, the labor and delivery rooms, and here in our interventional cardiology suite as well. So we need to have the structural components of an IV pole, a rack to hold these hanging blue-backed plastic sponge holders, a box that has the supply of the holders in them, and a rack sign, which is important. One, that it must be laminated so that if there's blood or any spattering, it can be washed off. And we want the sign to serve two purposes. One is to show that all of the sponges, we're telling everybody in the room, all of the sponges go here in these hanging blue-back plastic sponge holders. And the way that we're going to use them is not the way on this box, so we use the sign to also cover the box. In addition, you'll need to have a wall-mounted dry erase board, and 2 additional signs should be on the wall in the area where you're working. So those are the structural components, and then I'll show you the process elements. Usually you use a simple pack of 10 Raytech, and we say Raytech because these are radio opaque sponges that have a radiographic marker in them. So you should not use dressing sponges. If you make an incision, we want to use surgical sponges. These Raytech come in a package, and the way you want to count them in is to speak audibly and to see, separate, and say. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This counting in could be done by a radiology technologist or the X-ray technician or first assistant or the radiologist, him or herself, or cardiologist. Whomever has sterile gloves on is going to do the procedure. So after we've counted in the sponges, you want to have the count recorded on a wall-mounted dry erase board, something very simple in the radiographic area or cardiology. 10 Raytech, we counted in 10, just so that everybody knows and everybody can see how many sponges we're working with. Even though it's pretty unusual to have to use more than 10 Raytech during one of these smaller procedures or in a normal vaginal birth, if there is an occasion where you need to add more sponges to the field, I just wanted to make sure that you were clear on the way that we think is the safest way to keep track of the counts. So what we want you to do is to pick either a horizontal or a vertical format. I'm going to demonstrate this as a horizontal format, but this is called a running superscript total. So if you started with 10, and if you added another package, you would add 10 in a superscript and then add the total. And if you added another package, then you would add the total. If you added another package, then you would have the total. The point is that the last number here is the total number of Raytech, in this case, that would be out in the case. You'll notice there's no plus signs, no equal signs, running superscript total. And we know that if we have 40 sponges here, we should have 4 holders full of sponges. So now I want to show you the difference between a radio-opaque sponge, and we call these surgical sponges, and this is a dressing sponge. This is the radio-opaque marker that can be seen on X-ray. So these you use for dressings, and this is what you want to use anytime you're performing a procedure that has an incision. Okay. So now I'm going to show you and demonstrate how the sponges are placed in these hanging blue-backed plastic holders. The used sponges as they're off the field, a radiology technologist or nurse assistant can place the sponges. You want to be able to show the radiopaque marker facing forward. We want to start at the bottom pocket, and we move horizontally, loading from the bottom pocket up towards the top. So bottoms up is what we say. And we want you to load horizontally so that if there is extra sponge, or if there's a sponge that would be missing, it'll always be in the uppermost pockets, which is the easiest to see. So the radiopaque marker should be facing forward. And that's, again, how we're sure that we have a radio opaque sponge and not a dressing sponge. Whoops. 9. They have 9 Raytech, and even though this is just a pacemaker or a small procedure, this empty pocket indicates that I'm missing a sponge, and that's an incorrect count. The first maneuver should be to go and make sure you look in the incision, do a wound exam, palpate the incision, or if you've already closed the wound, you want to make sure that you can take an X-ray using fluoroscopy from 2 views, and your radiology technologists and other assistants should be looking around the room, look in the drapes, and the important place also is to look in the holders, because the Raytech are notorious for frequently sticking together, and sometimes you'll have 2 sponges in one pocket, which again is why I try to emphasize to separate the sponges. So now we had 10, we have no sponges, 10, 1 sponge per pocket, no empty pockets. This would be a correct final count. So one of the most transparent and powerful parts of this practice is that once you have all of the sponges in the holders, which you can very easily see, there are 10, they're all here, is that all of the sponges can be disposed of at one time by placing this plastic hanging holder into a red biohazard bag, because they are bloody. And now you've disposed of all the sponges from one case, so they're not in the room to confound the counts in another case.